I'm putting these three small cameras to the test. The Insta360 Go 2 has been getting quite a bit of buzz. The hat clip, magnets, stick it anywhere camera. The GoPro Hero 10, the world's best known mount it everywhere camera, and the DJI Action 2. Is it as innovative as DJI claims, or are the influencers right that it just isn't worth the extra price? Hi, I'm Adriel, and I'm on a mission to capture the everyday beauty around me and hope to inspire others to do the same. I like to create visual stories from the adventures and experiences that I go on, and like to find a small camera with an ultra-wide field of view that I can use to capture those unique and immersive shots. Simple and convenient, but also up to the challenge of the less than ideal lighting when hiking in Oregon's deep forests. Will one of these cameras make its way into my gear bag? I hope so, and I'm going to take you on the journey to make that decision. Let's get started with the Insta360 Go 2. Of these three cameras, only the Go 2 provides automatic horizon leveling at the widest field of view. The picture is bright and poppy, though the fisheye lens does bring some barrel distortion and stretching at the edges. Noise in the shadows can be distracting, and the glare and fringing are heavy here. My shots felt like they were coming from a premium backup camera, and that's not what I was expecting. Let's talk about mounting the Insta360 Go 2. Now, first off, the included clips, the hat clip and the sticky mount clip, are pretty thin plastic. I think it's fair to say that if you drop these and step on them, they're going to break. But there is an included 1/4-inch thread at the bottom of the case. So if you have the Insta360 Go in its case, you can attach the case to, say, a monopod, a tripod, or my small rig clamp here. Now the problem with that is, because of the shape of the case, I found these threads only go in about a half turn, maybe 3/4 turn at the most. It can be a little bit of a trick to get them on there as well. Personally, I wouldn't feel secure having it threaded in just that little a bit and hanging that off of a selfie stick over, say, rough terrain, a long drop, or water. Since we don't have a screen, we're going to need the app to compose our shot, and the camera connects relatively quickly. There are both manual controls and EV settings for automatic exposure. Shutter and ISO priority are supported, and there's a histogram. I did find the preview soft, and oddly the app doesn't support pivoting to a landscape mode. That 16:9 preview is awfully small when viewed across the short width of the phone. Back at home base, the process to export recordings was a bigger pain point than I expected. The combination of the Wi-Fi connection and the reliance on the phone's processor for stabilization makes for a much slower workflow. This also burns down batteries quickly, both on the camera and the phone. This might be a great camera for capturing those interesting, fun moments, especially when the sun's out. But how is that different than the camera that's on our phones, that's already in our pockets? But that ultra-wide, always level horizon. Now that's a trick, and that is what had me take a look at this camera. So that magic level horizon was not enough for me to keep the Insta360 Go 2. And if the influencers are right, that the DJI Action 2 is not worth the difference in price, well, there's a growing possibility I won't be keeping any of these three cameras. While waiting for the GoPro to arrive, I took the DJI Action 2 on a quick outing at our local park and was pleasantly surprised by the results. The light this evening was fantastic. These are conditions where many cameras will shine, yet a few things immediately stood out. Both the front and back screens can fully control the camera, but the app itself is phenomenal. An excellent preview is displayed in landscape mode. Camera data is clearly shown, including shutter and ISO. Manual modes are simple to dial in. The lens is incredibly wide with very little distortion. A fantastic picture. Working with the magnetic mounting system of the DJI Action 2 is pretty cool. The included 1/4-inch tripod adapter is built really tough. Just add this to the bottom of any tripod or my small rig here, and once I feel everything is secure and ready, then I just need to put the camera, click that on top. Neat. As the light faded to twilight, I was still able to capture static shots that on the iPhone were pretty rough. I returned in the morning to this beautiful frosty scene. And yes, that is a white fog bow. The overexposures are rolling off nicely, the flare is controlled well. This is a really good ultra-wide view. The DJI Action 2 has a horizon steady mode. That comes with a significant crop factor, and it's probably useful for vlogging, but how do we get those ultra-wide shots level? Well, this is going to record in full 4K resolution in the 4:3 aspect ratio. And what that means is in post-production, we have a lot of leeway as we recrop that to our 16:9 frame. All that extra vertical space means we don't need to crop in significantly when we go to correct an off-level horizon. So we just eyeball it in the field, bring it in, and fix that up. In fact, that's what we've already done in many of the shots that you've seen already. Speaking of post-production, access to the micro SD card for transferring files, very simple. Or connect a USB-C cable to make this into a card reader for your iPad or PC. As for the recordings, I am able to season to taste without the image falling apart. Add some gamma, some shadow lift, sharpness. This is doing great for 8-bit video. But the GoPro has arrived and I'm excited to have a look. The GoPro Hero 10 Black, a 10th generation standard by which all other action cameras are measured. Sure, it's larger than our other contenders, but the reviews seem to agree that this is still king of the hill. Well, not so fast. I was expecting this to be the most refined of the 3 cameras that I'm looking at, and honestly I was a little disappointed. Perhaps I had too high of expectations, so let's walk through some of my top friction points. The GoPro mounts may be excellent for high action situations, but to move this camera from mount to mount gets pretty tedious. I'm either messing with the thumb screws, which take quite a few turns to seat, or I'm screwing the entire GoPro onto a mount point, and that's awkward. The larger touchscreen is nice, though nearly half my taps tended to close a menu rather than change a setting. That got frustrating quick. Somehow, DJI was able to create a smoother experience on a screen less than half the size. The focal length is around 30% narrower than the DJI Action 2, and when we widen the view beyond standard lens mode, the barrel distortion really shows through. It's actually difficult to compare the quality between these 2 cameras because that field of view is so different. The GoPro app is useful for previewing the shot, but it lacks any exposure control. That needs to be done at the back of the camera. And here's the head scratcher. When recording starts, the preview goes black. I found that these limitations made it difficult to compose a shot with this camera. Now, keep in mind that the front screen is a preview and status screen only. To make any exposure adjustments, I have to do that on the back screen of the camera. And if I were going to be mounting this in a place where I don't have access to that back screen, I need to dial in those exposure settings before doing the mounting, and the app isn't helpful at all here in this area. For those manual exposure changes, it's a little bit fiddly. I have to dive through a couple menus, and the ISO, you have to set both a minimum ISO and a matching maximum ISO to fix that in. So on the automatic exposure side, there isn't a concept of a shutter priority, and that's pretty important for dialing in those buttery smooth shutter speeds. I really could go on. I've cut this list significantly to help smooth this video out, but these are really surprising limitations of a 10th generation camera. Hey, so the GoPro has some rough edges, but how does it compare with the Action 2 in a deep, dark forest hike? Well, let's go. When attached to the DJI Action 2, the microphone array on the front touchscreen module captures an immersive sound field. Have a listen as we approach the waterfall. In this setting, the DJI Action 2 rises head and shoulders above the GoPro Hero 10. It's not even a close race, and that surprised me. The slightly larger sensor seems to make a significant difference. For the Action 2 shots, I'm able to lift the shadows, add some sharpness, a little bit of vibrance, whereas the GoPro shots have an over-processed look already baked in. So the DJI Action 2 is the ideal choice for my goals, and it's earned a place in my gear bag. Between the nearly distortion-free ultra-wide field of view, the capabilities in less than ideal lighting conditions, and the app, they've combined to make a pretty great auxiliary camera. I'm impressed with the cinematic style footage that this little cube can put out. It's expensive, yes, but the build quality and the capabilities really come through. Before we leave off, I'm going to answer a few questions that I know I had about the Action 2 before I began to test it. Is the front screen combo kit worth the price difference? I would say yes for a couple of reasons. First is sound. The extra microphones that are on the lower unit with the screen are excellent. Quite the difference from the single mono mic on the camera unit itself. And if you're a vlogger, I could see that front screen being very useful to frame your shot. But outside of those two reasons, the app is so good that I find myself not really needing to use that front screen. One note though is that the front screen combo kit does come with the magnetic ball head attachment, which I think is a must-have accessory. So if you factor out the price of that, the cost difference between the two is not as severe as it looks on paper. Is it a problem that the lower unit isn't waterproof? I would say no. Let's say I'm in a boat or in a damp forest, I'm not going to have a problem using the lower unit. But if I'm in a condition where we might get splashed or maybe hiking behind a waterfall, I'd go ahead and take that unit off and tuck it away into a dry bag until we're safe again. This can be completely immersed. Now, there's some neat engineering going on with the way that these two units work. Whenever the lower unit is attached, the upper unit, when it's powered on, is pulling power from that lower unit. So it's not using its own internal battery. It's also charging the upper unit if there has been any battery usage. As soon as you snap that bottom unit off, it's using this internal battery. Snap it back on again, it's using the lower unit battery. Also, the audio is immediately available. Those extra microphones are immediately available in the menus of the upper unit as soon as that bottom unit is attached. It's a pretty neat piece of engineering. So is there anything I wish was different about the DJI Action 2? Sure, there's always room for improvement. One thing I wish they had was a virtual horizon line on the screen, so I could level this out easily. Both on the screens, on the camera, it would be ideal also to have that on the app. Also, I'd like to be able to lock in the automatic exposure, and you can actually do this on the GoPro, where you tap the screen and hold, and it will lock that automatic exposure just like you're used to on an iPhone, and then you can dial in the EV compensation from there. Now the manual controls on here are so good that this isn't a hard one, but it would be nice to be able to do that. And I do have some concerns about the battery life. As this charges, it gets pretty warm, and that typically indicates some stress on the batteries. And I'd like to know more about the battery replacement program. So after a couple of years of use, how expensive will it be to kind of refresh this and keep its life going? So why didn't I test the Insta360 1R 1-inch? That larger sensor certainly would be ideal in those lower lighting conditions like we saw here. I do feel like I got a sense of what the workflow might be like by testing the Insta360 Go 2 and what the larger form factor would be like by testing the GoPro Hero 10. And I feel like in my kit, the compromise between quality and convenience is better served with the DJI Action 2. That was a long review and you stayed this far. If you found it useful, please do hit the like button so it has a chance of showing up on somebody else's feed. And if you want to see more in the future, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you then.